Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin, and in this video we are going to cover how you can create a basic web app to retrieve token information and token prices to get you started building on Solana. So we will talk about how to set up your own Next.js project and SVS component libraries, how to create a basic form with the help of an AI agent, how to validate if a token address is valid, and also retrieve both token information and pricing using the SVS token price API and the SVS metadata API. And on top of that, all the code will be available for download via our GitHub repository. Now this video is part of a series, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos where we will eventually create our own simple trading bot. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so before we jump into the code, I want to share a quick high-level overview of the application that we are going to build. So, as I said before, we are going to build a simple web app in Next.js, and we are going to use SVS for the components. And as you can see, the app is quite straightforward. It will have an input field where we can add a token address, and then we can add that token address. And once it is a valid address or a valid token, it will appear here in the table underneath. So once we add the token address and click the add button, we will send that token to a server action where it will be verified to see if it is a legit token. To do that, we will use the Solana kit and we will create a RPC connection using the RPC endpoint that we purchased in the previous video. We will use the fetch mint functionality, and eventually, if everything goes well, our function will return true or false, saying that the token is or legit or not legit at all. So if the token is legit, we will also pull some information from the token like the current price, the image, the name and the symbol. And for that, we will use a function called getTokenPrices that in turn will do a call to the SVS token API and the SVS metadata API. These API endpoints will return that information to us, and then we will bundle it in a nice package to send it back to our client application that shows here. Now, once the token is added, we will also have these sync buttons, and we will just repurpose the functionality from the getPrices function to pull the token prices and the token information once again using these same two SVS endpoints. We will also have a sync tokens button that will sync the prices and the information of all the tokens listed here. And for that, we will again use the same functionality, as we will be able to send multiple mints in one go to these two endpoints. The endpoints, they accept string arrays, so it doesn't matter if we send one or multiple tokens. Again, this is a simple app that we will build in this video. I will guide you step by step how to set it up, how to get it started, and also how to build the actual functionality. And later on in the next videos, we are going to build on top of this app where we're going to actually buy the tokens and eventually create our own trading bot. So with that said, let's jump into the code. So the first thing that we need to do is initiate our Next.js project, and that we can do by going to their official documentation and check out how we can get started. So if you go to Next.js.org, you will see that they promote themselves as the React framework for the web. And I believe that's one of the reasons why it is so popular, as it is a React framework, but it comes with a lot of additional benefits, like for example, built-in optimizations, dynamic HTML streaming, but also server components and server actions. But if you want to know more about that, you can check out their official webpage. What we want to check out is how we can get started. So we can click on docs, go to installation, and here you can find the command that we will have to run to initiate a Next.js project. So what we can do is just copy this installer command, go back to our IDE, go to terminal and click on new terminal. So here we have a terminal, and then we can just paste the command and press enter. So the first thing that we will have to do is answer some questions, like for example, the name of our project. And we can call this the SVS token checker, just like that. And we want to use TypeScript, ESLint for now, Tailwind CSS. We want to have everything within the source directory. We want to use the app router. TurboPack is when we are going to test and compile, so for now we can do yes. import aliases. Do we want to customize these? No. And if we just do all that, you will see that we will start installing all the dependencies needed and also all the dev dependencies needed for our Next.js project. All right, so if everything went well, then you will see that you will be greeted by this success message here, and that you have a folder here called SVS token checker. So what we can do is navigate to that folder by typing cd SVS token checker, and we can clear our window. And now you see that we are within the SVS token checker project. And just to check that everything went well, what we can do is type npm run dev. Because Next.js comes with a built-in, you could say, web server that will make sure that we can access our project real time. So you type the run command npm run dev, and you will see that it will provide us where we can actually find our application. So we can go to localhost port 3001. And if we click that, then you will see that Next.js will spin up a default web page. So as you can see here, it says Next.js, and if you see that, that means that you have installed Next.js properly and that you are ready to move on. Alright, so once Next.js is installed, the next thing that we will do is install shadcn or initialize shadcn within our project. So what you can do is press Ctrl+C, and that will stop our web server. And if you now go back, you will see that it once you refresh, it no longer answers. And that is what we expected. So shadcn is a component library that we will use to add components to our web app, because it is really easy to add all these components. As you can see here, we don't have to spend a lot of time in creating all these components by ourselves. We can just import these components within our project. And the good thing about shadcn is that we will own all the components that we will import into our project. So we will import the components, but it will actually behind the scenes import the code for that component, which we can easily change. We can add variants for these components, and we can also build on top of that. But I will show you in a minute what I mean with that. So the first thing that we want to check out is how we can initiate shadcn within our program. So again, we can go to docs. We are using Next.js, so we can click Next.js, and here we can read that we can run the init command to create a new Next.js project or to set up an existing one. And we already have a Next.js project, so we will use it in an existing one, but that command should also be okay for us. So let's start with setting it up by copying this command, going back to our application, and once we are in our terminal again, what we can do is just paste the npx shadcn at latest.init command. And also this should prompt us with some questions. And here we can say that we just want to use the neutral color scheme, and it will then continue with setting up some global CSS files for you and also installing the dependencies needed for our project to actually use shadcn. Also here you will be greeted with a success message, and if you run your dev server now once again, you will see that not much has changed besides the actual color background of the app. So you see that this now is white, and that means that we successfully imported that new global CSS file into our project, and we know that shadcn is running as it should. So besides that, not much is changed, but we are now ready to move on and start adding these components to our project. Alright, so for now we can just stop our web server once again. We can clear our terminal so everything is nice and tidy, and then we can go back to the shadcn docs. So here we can see how we can actually add components, and adding components is really easy. You just have to run one command. So if you would want to add a button component, you can just run the npx shadcn latest add button. And we can have a quick look at all the components available for us. For example, the alert component. This we can really easy add to our project, and I think we should test this. So if we look at the code, this is how it looks like. And of course you can copy all this, but as I said, we can use a command to install this component within our project. So what we will do is just copy this install command, go back to our project and paste that command here. And then this will install the alert component for us. As you can see, it created one additional file, and we can go to that file under source components, and then you will see the alert.tsx. And this file represents the alert component that we can import everywhere in our project. And as I said, as you can see, there are variants, and we can really easy add variants if you want to, for example, have a success alert, a warning alert, or a danger alert, as we already have here under destructive. So let's test this out. If we would go back to our application under page, here you will see all the components, all the markup, all the elements that are currently used to display our app. So if we would run our server once again and go to the app and refresh, then you will see that we have the default app here. And one of the things here says get started by adding source app page.tsx, and that is exactly where we are. If we would go back to our app here under source app page.tsx, and that is what we are looking at. But now we just want to add that alert box to see if everything works well. So what we can do is go back to the chat.cn, and here we have an example on how we can use it. So we can just copy this, go back to our code, and we can choose to have this here above the main, for example, import the alert. And what we have to do is, of course, import the alert, the terminal icon, the alert title, and the alert description. And as you can see, once we are importing this, it will appear here on top, and it is importing that from components UI alert, just where we added these components once we ran that install command. So the only thing we need to change is what variant we want to use, and for now we can use the destructive. And if we save this and go back to our app, you will see that it automatically reflects these changes. And that is how we can easily add these components to our app really quick without having to build all the logic for building a simple component like this. Now, as you saw, there are a lot of components within chat.cn, and you can import them all one by one once you want to use them. However, if you go to CLI, you will see that there is also a flag that we can use to install all the components at once. And for this project, that is what we will just do. So we will install all the components straight away. So later on in our project, we don't have to think about installing these components one by one. We will have direct access to all these components. So what we have to do is run the same command, but besides specifying the component that we want, we are going to use the --all flag, just as it says here. So if we go back to our project and we would stop our server for one moment, here we added the alert box. So what we can do now is just type --all. And this will start installing all the components available for chat.cn and load them into our project here under the components UI folder. So once it is done installing all these components, you will see here on the left, now we have access to all these components because we have them living in our project. We can just minimize this directory here and also once again clear our browser or our terminal better. The next thing that we can do is go to that page.tsx where we added that alert and remove everything from this page and just have a text that says test. So we can remove everything, just create a p tag like that and write test. And we can save it, and we can also remove all the imports here on top. And if you now save this and then start your server up once again, if you go and look now, you will see that it just displays the test message here on top. So now we are ready to start building our own overview, our own dashboard that we will use to show our tokens and also our buttons to fetch the tokens, to add new tokens, to sync the token prices, and all that cool stuff. Now, besides adding buttons and components using chat.cn, what we can also do is go to their blocks section. And here we can import complete blocks, complete dashboards within our project without having to actually get all these blocks one by one. What you can do is just choose a block of your liking. And also here you will see that there is an npx chatcn add comment that you can use. And if you click on it, you can just copy it and then go back to your application. And once again, go to your terminal, stop your server, and if you paste that comment here, what it will do is also add this whole dashboard to our app. So you will see that it starts importing stuff, but of course it will skip some of these as we already imported most of the components from chatcn earlier. And you will see that now a new dashboard folder appears here under the app. And in Next.js, if you create a new folder under app and add a page.tsx, that will automatically create a root for you. And I will show you what I mean. So if we go back to our application and you would type dash or / dashboard, you will see that the dashboard, of course, we need to start our app once again. So once we start the app, you will see that this dashboard that we wanted to import from chatcn now appears under the /dashboard. Now, what we want to do is make sure that this dashboard appears on our front page, as we don't want to use the /dashboard page. So what we can do is just take this page from here, and we can copy everything and paste it within the page that we had already here. And then you can just delete the dashboard folder just like this. And now you have the actual dashboard that we imported under the main page. As you can see, also Next.js behind the scenes will refresh everything. So dashboard no longer exists. And if we would go to our root, you will see that we now have the dashboard here in front of us. Alright, so I hope that you start seeing how powerful this combination of Next.js and chatcn actually is. And of course, it doesn't always look straight away how we want it, but as I said before, we are owning now all these components and we can really update them, make changes, add variants to them. And that is the next thing that I will do right now. So if you go back to your codebase app page, you will see that it has an import, for example, for the app sidebar. And under the app sidebar, you will find all the information that is used within the dashboard. So here you can see the themes, for example, you can see the main navigation, and it has, for example, history, start, settings. And if you look at this, you'll see here history, start, settings. You have these components here, like the three on top, the big one below, also the breadcrumbs here on top, and you have these project links here as well, and also a button for a user that is logged in, for example. So what you can do now is go within these components and start removing stuff that you no longer want. You can also update the title, for example, and give your app a name. And all of that you can do by just going to your project, start removing some of the items that you no longer want here. For example, removing the sidebar footer. If you would remove this component and you go back, you will see that we no longer have this user component here. So all these things are really easy to be edited. Again, the page will hold, for example, also the overview, these elements here on top, the three on top, as I said. So what we can do is remove these three on top, save our file, and now you'll see that we are left with only the big one. So what I will do now is customize this dashboard slightly so that it looks a bit more decent to use in our app. And once that's done, we can move on with building the actual logic. Alright, so this is the dashboard that I ended up with. I imported the SVS logo and added the logo here on the left top, changed the name to Solana Vibe Station Token Tracker, and I only left one menu item here called Dashboard. I also removed the user information and changed the breadcrumbs here on top, and left only one element here that we can use to add our token tracker logic. Alright, so now that we have our dashboard set up, I think it's the right time to shift gears real quick and introduce AI agents to our project. So an AI agent is a tool that we can integrate within our IDE that will help us build some of the aspects of our code. Of course, we will have to provide it with specific instructions because these AI agents tend to write a lot of code and we want to keep control over our code base. However, these AI agents, they can be beneficial if it comes to basic boilerplate code and help us speed up the development of our app. Of course, the critical components that have to do with the blockchain, we will take care of ourselves, but we will have the help of an AI agent that can help us with all the boring boilerplate code. We will use a tool called RuCode today, and we will attach OpenRouter to it. And OpenRouter is a collection of all different language models, which we then can access just by one API key. Alright, enough talking. Let's just install the RuCode application into our IDE and get started. So, what you have to do is go to github.com/rucodeinc/ru-code, and of course we will put the link in the description of this video. But once you are there, you can scroll down a bit and here you can find more information about the project. You will also see a download button to get the extension from the VS Marketplace, and once you have downloaded it and installed it, it will be available within your IDE. As you can see here, I have the RuCode extension installed, and once it is installed, you will be greeted with this kind of message. Here you will have a window where you can enter your prompt, and there are a few modes that we can use. We can, for example, use the architect mode, which will plan and design before implementation. We will have a code buddy available, a tool that can write code for us. We can ask questions or just have a general conversation. We can also have a debug mode, and that mode we can set if we run into problems. This mode will be able to debug our code. It can even read the terminal inputs and outputs, and based on that debug our code. And we have the orchestrator, which can coordinate tasks across multiple modes. But for now, we will just leave the code mode on. And the next thing that we will have to do is attach a language model to our RuCode. Now for that, we can use OpenRouter, and we will also put the link for that in the description of this video. Or you can go to openrouter.ai. And here you can read more about the project. But in a nutshell, OpenRouter will allow us to create only one API key that we can add to our RuCode and access all these different language models from that one API key. We can also choose to attach a language model directly and use a key from, for example, OpenAI. But I believe that it is beneficial that we use a tool like OpenRouter, where we can just have one key and switch between multiple languages if we want to do so. So you will need to create an account. You have to add some credits to it. It is really cheap if you use the right models. And these models you can all compare here under their models page, where you can sort on the prompt pricing, and also they have other parameters that you can filter on and look at all these different models to see what is the most beneficial for your project. As I said, in this project we will use Claude 3.7, and to do that we can go to settings, and under settings we can scroll down and select the Anthropic Claude 3.7 model. Once we have done that, the next thing we have to do is go to API keys, generate an API key, copy that API key and go back to our IDE. Then under the settings of RuCode, you can go down, enter the OpenRouter provider or select the OpenRouter provider, enter your API key, and also here you can select the model that you want to use. Once you have set this up, you save your settings and you are ready to go. Alright, so now that we have our project set up, we have our default layout and our AI agent is configured within our IDE, we can move on by actually building the logic for fetching the tokens, getting the latest prices, and also sync the prices for all the tokens that we have fetched so far. Now there is only one thing that we need to do. We need to make the layout where we can add the tokens, display the tokens and its prices, and also create the buttons. Now these tasks are often repetitive and they take time, and that is an ideal task to hand over to, for example, an AI agent. So we will instruct our AI agent to create a simple form, a simple table, and all the buttons needed to get these tokens into our app, sync the tokens, display the token prices, and so on. And after that, once we have that layout, we can build on top of that and make sure that we can implement like fetching the actual prices, adding the tokens and making sure the tokens are legit, and also making sure that we can fetch the prices of all the tokens that we are already tracking. So that's what we are now going to do. We're going to instruct our AI agent and see what it comes up with. Alright, so I wrote a quick prompt that we can use for our AI agent and instruct it to create our form. And as you can see, you can also tag files within your prompt. You just have to type the @ symbol, and then you will be able to point to certain files within your project. But for now, I wrote in page.tsx, and that is our main file over here. Create a small form where we can enter a token address. And once added, I want it to show in a table. The table needs to have the following columns: token address and price. I want you to use all native chat.cn components. Also add a button on the right top of the form saying sync prices. And for now, just console log once clicked. Also add a button in each row saying sync price. For now, console log the action. And I say to specifically console log the action because I don't want the bot or the AI agent to create any logic for us that will go and fetch the prices. Once it's clicked, I want it just to console log it, and then later we can create that own functionality within our project to actually go and fetch the prices, sync the prices, all this great stuff. So we can just enter now and see what it comes up with. So by default, you can see that it will always ask for your approval. You can also set auto approve rules, and you can auto approve it to read, write, browse, all these actions. Now, I believe it's a great idea to leave auto approve on, so you always have an idea what the AI agent is doing. It's also really verbose, so it will always tell you what it is doing, what it is planning to do, what file it wants to read, inspect, update, all this stuff. And later here you can choose to approve or reject. Now, for now, Rue wants to read this file and we can approve that. So once we approve it, it will go and read the file, see what is already there, come up with a plan, and if it needs to look into additional files to get a better understanding of what is going on in this file, it will also do that. And also here you can see that it will ask us for permission. Now, reading the file, it's indexing the file. Probably it can sometimes take a bit of time, and often it asks also to look at other files included in the project. Now, here we can approve all because we don't mind the AI agent reading our code to get a better understanding what we're doing, because then it will also come up with a better solution. So now it wants to actually edit our file over here, because after the investigation that it did, it comes to a conclusion, and you can read through the whole conclusion here and what it found out, and then the changes it will make. And then once it makes these changes, it will provide us with a split overview of the old code, I believe, and the new code. As you can see here, the changes that it wants to add. And if you want to inspect these changes first, you can do so. And you can also re-prompt like, hey, I like these changes that you do here, but I want you to make that slight change before I approve it. But if you are okay with the changes that it proposes, then you can just click save. So let's really quickly check out what it proposes us. So it wants to turn this into a client component. By default, all components or all pages created in Next.js are server rendered. We need to turn this into a client component because probably there is some client functionality that we want to tap into for the form that can only run on a client component, so or a client page. So besides that, it wants to import some elements for our form, like an input, a button, and also table and cards. So that is all expected as we asked it to create a table. It's creating some interfaces as we are using TypeScript, and here you can see that it has the handle actions for when we are adding tokens, and also the actions for handling the sync of all the tokens, handling the sync for a token. And as you can see, it will do a console log here instead of actually creating a logic or going to use a function that we will also create later. So that all seems fine. And if we scroll down here, we can see that it actually added some card elements, which we will probably be able to use to add a token, as you can see here, and also a table. So at first sight, this looks good. So let's approve it. So now it says that it needs to check if it needs to import the card components since I use them in the implementation. So it wants to double check and also when you save these changes and it notices that it, for example, creates TypeScript errors, it will also suggest you to that it will go and fix these errors. So we are okay with having it a additional look to make sure that everything is fine. And once it's fine, as you can see here, now it wants to go into that folder and run the server. However, our server is already running, so we can reject that, or you can also choose to close the session completely. So we can do that for now. And you can always choose to restart your server. As I said, Next.js in the background will always reflect the changes for you, but for good practices, we can always restart our server. So that's what we did. And if we go back to our local host, and not the dashboard, but our root page, then we should see now a new form appearing that has been created by our AI agent. And it did as we asked. It created a small form where we can add a token. And if we add that token, it should probably add it to the list. So we can for now probably enter anything, as we don't have any validation set up yet, but that we will all take care of ourselves later. And if we add the token, you can see that it adds the token here. The price is not available, but the sync price button is there. And also the button for syncing all the tokens once they are in here. So we can also add a second token probably. And as you can see, they all are being appended here in our table with the sync buttons in place. So that looks good for now. I think we can work with this. And as you can see, it took our AI agent roughly 1-2 minutes to come up with this form, which we of course instructed ourselves, but it goes much faster than actually creating this form ourselves, writing all the logic for taking care of the actions behind the buttons. So I think there is always a place for using these AI agents within your project, but you need to be really careful that you instruct them really well and that you also always approve the changes that it wants to make, and that you don't let it run on autopilot, because then it can create a lot of code that you often don't need and you don't have a great understanding of your own code base. So with that said, we are happy with what it produced, and we will now continue with creating all the logic behind the buttons to fetch the tokens, to check if the tokens are actually legit tokens, fetch the prices, and also update the prices when we want. Alright, so one of the first things that we need to make sure is working properly is making sure that the tokens or the token addresses that being added in our form are actually legit tokens. As you can see, we were able to add here token and token number 2, but these are not valid token addresses. So we need some kind of functionality that will check, first of all, if it is a valid token address, but also if the token exists. Because if we are going to add tokens within our system which are not actually valid tokens, that will cause issues along the way, as we will try to fetch pricing and so on. So the first functionality that we will build is to verify if the token that we entered is legit, and that we can do by going back to the Solana cookbook, which we looked at in the previous video under the token management, because there they have an example that we can use to see how we can get a token mint. So if we click on that, you will see that they have some examples on how to do that. Of course, we're not using Rust or Python, but there are 2 examples on how to do that. Now, you have the TypeScript legacy option, and that is what we can use to do that, of course. But for now, we will use the TypeScript kit. So this functionality we can just import into our project, make some slight changes, and then we can create a function that just accepts a token address or any value that we give it, sees if it's a valid token, and then returns true or false to us, because based on that we can allow the user to enter that token into our system. So if we go back to our project, I created already a folder called server under the app folder. Within the server folder, I created a folder services, and within the services folder, I created a file called tokenservice.ts. Now, why do we call this folder server? As we will hold all the functionality which runs as a server function in Next.js, and we will create a folder called services, as this will be a service. Remember, we will send it a token address, and the service will verify for us if it's a valid token and then return to us true or false. And of course, the file is called token service because this file will hold all the services related to tokens. As you can see, I imported the logic here from the Solana cookbook, and for now we have the default RPC, but we will change this with the RPC that we bought in the first video from Solana Vibe Station. And if you didn't check out that video, you can do that first and then come back here, or update it with the RPC that you bought via the Solana Vibe Station cloud platform. Now, we need any RPC here, and then we can feed that into the create Solana RPC, which comes with the Solana kit package. Next, what we will do is try to get that mint address, which is provided via this function here, and turn it into a address object. And address also comes with the Solana kit. And the next thing that we will do is try to fetch the mint information based on the RPC object that we created and the address object. And if everything goes well, it will return to us true. Now, if something goes wrong with creating the actual RPC connection, or trying to create an address object, or trying to fetch the mint information, it will return false to us. And then it is likely that we don't have a valid token, and then we don't want to add it to our system. Now you can see that there are these red underlinings here under the Solana kit and the Solana program libraries, and that is because we don't have them imported yet. And we can do that really easy by stopping our server, copy solana/kit, and then just type npm i solana/kit. And this will start installing the libraries that we need to access these functionalities and these methods here. And of course, we will have to do the same for the Solana program /token22. Now, if everything goes well, it will return us a success message. And then we can also try to install the other packages here. And once installed properly, these red underlinings, they should disappear. So now we can see here, both packages are installed. And of course, the first one already updated and the second one updated now as well. And now you can see that the functionality doesn't return any errors because it is also green here on top. And we should be able to use this functionality within our form, providing it a mint address, and that will return to us true or false based on that the mint is legit or not. Alright, so I just updated the RPC URL using the one I bought via the Solana Vibe Station cloud platform. I saved the file, and now we are ready to use this functionality within the pages file that we have that holds our form. So remember, our AI agent created this form here, also the table, and it created the functionalities that we can use to update the token prices or update all the token prices, but also to add a token. Now, under this function here, we can add that check that will verify if the token that we are trying to add is legit. The first thing that I want to do is just update the name of this function here real quick to keep our function names short and concise. So instead of calling it handle add token, I will call it add token, just like this. And we also have to update it one time below here within the form. So we call it add token, just like this, and then save it. This will make sure that our function names are short and that we can recognize them really easy. So once we have done that, we can have a look at this function, because here I added already the functionality that will be used to verify the token. And as you can see here, we imported the isValidToken or isValidSolana token function that we just created here. So that will return to us true or false, and that we can store into a constant called isValidToken. And then we can check if this is actually true or false. And if false was returned, what we will do is set a state containing a message that the token that was entered is not good, returning token validation using fetched mint failed. Cannot add token to list. And we will also set the adding token state to false, because we are no longer adding a token. Now, these two states are declared here on top, and they are used to see when we are adding a token, so we can show a nice spinner on our page. As you can see here, is adding token, and is invalid token is also added here on top. Now the is invalid token is or null or a string, and if it holds a string, that means that we have an error. If it's null, that means everything went well. And of course the set is adding token, that is only set to true while we are adding a token. As you can see, once the token has been added, for example here, or it is denied, it is set to false. And what we can do here as well is, once everything is done and we added the token to our state here, set tokens, which holds the tokens that are currently added, we can also set that to false. So we can set here reset states and set this to false, because we are no longer adding a token. So set is adding token is false when we added the token, but is also false when we try to add a token and it is not a valid token. So again, if something went wrong, we set the invalid token state with a message, and then we can show that message within our form. So now we have the functionality here that will add the token just as before, but we inserted this one function that we created earlier to actually check if the token is valid. Now, if the token is not valid, we will return, and that means nothing will happen after that. However, if it is valid, it will just continue and add the token as it did before. So what we can do is try this out by starting our server once again, npm run dev. And once it is started, we can go to that server. And once our server is loaded, you will see that we see the same form just as before. So let's try to add the token just as we did before. But if we now click add token, you will see that we get the message token validation using fetch mint failed. Cannot add token to list. So this is a good indication that our actual function is working because the text that we added here is not a valid mint. So what we can do now is try to go and get a valid mint, add it to the form, try to add it and see if it appears within our table. So I opened GMGN here real quick, and we can take the first mint from the token that was migrated. So what we can do is just copy this mint, go back to our app, add the token address here and click the add token button. And as you can see, now the address was added because the token that we added here is a valid token. And again, we can try that with the next mint as well. We copy the mint back to our app, add it into our form, add token, and you can see that also this token was added. Now, if we just slightly change the name of the address and we try to add it, then you will see that it will return to us that same error message, meaning the token address that we added is invalid. This is a great first step, and with that done, let's check what we need to do next. Alright, so real quick before we move on, I want to show you how we make sure that this text appears here when these tokens are invalid. So of course we already covered why that is, because we are checking it here in the functionality when we add the token. However, if it is an invalid token, as I told you before, we will set this invalid token state. And this invalid token state has a value called invalid token. And if we look for that state further down in our code, then you will see that we have a condition here within our form. What we say is if invalid token has a string and is not null, then we will show this alert here. And you know already how we set an alert because we looked at that before when we were setting up ShadCN, and that alert will show the message that is held in this invalid token state. And if this invalid token state is null, then it will not show that message. We do the same for the actual spinner once we are adding the token, because we have here the value is adding token, and that state is set, remembered, when we are adding the token, and it is also unset when the token adding is done. So while this is true, we will show a loader and we will hide the table. And when this is false or untrue, then of course we will show the table. And that is why you see the spinner when we are adding the token and see the error message when something went wrong. Alright, so the next functionality that we want to add is actually checking the token information like the name, the symbol and the image, and also fetch the token price. And to do that, we can use the Solana VibeStation APIs, and we can have a look at that on the official documentation. So if you go to docs.solanavibestation.com/developers, you will find the API documentation. And if you scroll down, you will see the SVS API documentation. And we in particular are interested in the token price API and the token metadata API. So let's check out the token price API first. So here we can provide a string array of mints or just one mint. And if we send it to this API endpoint from Solana VibeStation, it will return us the prices from these mints in Solana. For now, we are supporting Radium, Radium Launchpad, Bong.fun, Pump.fun, and PumpSwap. So any of these token addresses can be sent in one call to the endpoint, and it will return to us the price. So we can also try this once again as we did before. So if we click on the try it button, you will see that we can add a mint address here and click send. So as you can see, this will return to us the pricing for the token or for the tokens that we requested for in Solana. It returns the latest price, and it also returns the average price for the last 24 hours, the hour, 15 minute or 1 minute. And again, it is quoted against Solana, so the prices are returned to us in Solana. The next API endpoint that we will consume is the token metadata API, because this will return us the actual information like the name, the symbol, and also the image. And then we can nicely integrate that into our application. Also here we can provide one or multiple mints in a string array, send it to the API endpoint, and get something returned like this. Also this we can test to see how it looks. Here we can add one mint or multiple mints, click the send button, and you will see that it will return the actual name, the symbol, and the image of the token. So knowing that, we can now integrate these two endpoints into our project, create a nice function that has the calls within, and then consume that function in our form once we add a token. And again, if the token is valid, we will fetch that information and display it within the table. So with that said, let's do that now. Alright, so back to our token service.ts file where we hold all the logic, our server-side logic that has to do with tokens. Also here I created a function called getTokenPrices, and that function will fetch the information via the two endpoints that we just looked at. So the first thing that we do is create a results constant, and we will assign it a token type. And if you look at token type, it is declared here on top. That will just hold the address, the price, the name, and the image. And that is also what we will return back to our form. So the next thing that we do is fetch the actual price of the token, consuming the API endpoint that we just looked at, the price API endpoint, and we will provide it the mints in a string format, or in a string array format better. This function we will use in our form, and we will provide it the tokens, which we then here can provide to our API endpoint in turn, and it will return us the price response. The price response we will store into a constant called price data, and the price data constant we will assign a type called price data. And also price data is here declared on top, and price data hold a value called prices, and prices is pointing to the price interface here. And this interface reflects the actual data that has been returned by the API. So as you can see here, you have base mint, quote mint, average pricing, and latest price. So if we look back at the actual documentation, that is what is returned to us here. And why do we do that? So we have exact types assigned to our data that has returned, and then we can access these values really easy as we are using TypeScript. The next thing we do is fetch the actual token metadata. We are doing the same. We are using Axios here, and Axios is just a fancy fetch library, and based on that response we will get the metadata back from the token, and also that we store into a type, and the type for that is also declared here on top, which also reflects the actual values that are returned to us by the API. And you can see here we have mint, name, off-chain metadata. And if we look at the information here, you can see that we return the mint, name, symbol, and the off-chain metadata. So we also assign a type to the information that has been returned to us here. So the next thing that we do is actually iterate through all the prices that have been returned to us, because if a price has been returned, then we want to send it back to our form to store it into our table. So what we do here is iterate through each of these prices that has been returned, and then we will fetch that mint and get the actual token prices, because we are going through an array, and we look within that array for that mint, and then we store the token price for that mint that we're looking at into this constant here. And we do the same for the metadata. And if we have metadata and a token price returned, then we will continue. If not, then we will go out of the loop, or we will go to the next actually. If we have the token price and the metadata returned, then we will make sure that we formatted it correctly. So we will take the token price, which is stored in the token price object, latest price, and we can really easy iterate through that because we have the types. As you can see here, it suggests what we can use, and we want to use the latest price. ToFixed means that we will just only show 7 digits after the comma here, and then sol. So we will return it really nicely into a formatted price value showing the sol price with 7 digits after the comma. After that, we will push everything that has been found, like for example the address, of course, the price that we just formatted, and also the name, and the name is located within the metadata, and also the symbol. We create a nice string here from the name and the symbol, and if it's not found, we will return null, and also the image. And again, the image is also found in the metadata, and also here, as we have types, we can really easy see what we are looking for. In this case, off-chain metadata, and in the off-chain metadata, we are looking for an image. And this is possible as we are using TypeScript, and we assigned these types to our return data. Once we have done that for every token price in our returned prices, and we push them into our results array, we will return that results array back to our main script or the main page here, where we can consume it and add it to our table. So let's look at that right now. Alright, so back to our page.tsx file, where we added some small changes, and I walk you through all the changes that I made to add this functionality that we just created to this file. So first of all, I expanded the token interface because it's no longer only holding an address and a price. We will also have a name and an image, because if you look back at our token service file, what the getTokenPrices function returns is the token info data, and that is the promise that this function will return. If you look at that interface, it will return a success message, the data, and the data is the token object, and the token object, as you can see here, holds a name and an image, and that is the change that we want to reflect within our page.tsx file. Besides that, we will also return a message in case the success is false. So back to our page.tsx file, we had our add token functionality where we actually checked if the token was legit, and if it is legit, then we added it to our table. So the next thing that we want to add is the getTokenPrices functionality, because if the token is legit, then we want to fetch the prices and the token metadata. So the first thing that I did is add a token mint constant, and that will just hold the token as trimmed, since we know that this was a valid token. And then we will send this token to our function getTokenPrices. And of course, we have to turn it into a string array, because as I said before, the APIs from Solana Vibe Station, they can or receive one token in a string array, but you can also send multiple tokens within this string array to get information back from multiple tokens. So that's what we do here. We provide the token mint to that function, and that function, as I showed you earlier, will return us a promise, and that promise is the token info data, and that holds a success value. And if that success value is not true, then we will output the message that is stored in the message field. So, however, if the success message is true, then we will move on, and we will check if the token data that was returned from the functionality here actually contains some information. And if it contains information, then we will again add that token that we just fetched the prices for and the data for to our setTokens state, as we had declared here earlier on top, which is representing the token object. And that state has a set state that we can use to add tokens to that. And the first thing that we will do is spread the existing tokens, and with spread I mean we add these 3 dots, and then it will add all the existing tokens within this state already to it, and then we add the new one that we just received from the token data, which is the updated tokens data that we received from the getTokenPrices function. If all is well, then of course we will continue and just reset our states as we did before. One more thing we need to add, of course, is extra columns to show the token name and symbol and the image. And we can do that by scrolling down all the way to our table, and you will see that I created a condition for when an image is returned. Then we will, of course, display that image that is within the token object. And if no image is returned, then we will just display the default SVS logo here. And of course, we also added a column for the token name. One last thing we need to make sure is configured correctly is our next.config.ts, because we want to allow remote images, because all these images that have been returned, we will use the actual URL from that image to display it in our app. So with this, we just allow Next.js to display these images from remote addresses, allowing both HTTPS and the HTTP protocol. With that functionality added, we can now go back to our application. And besides just adding the tokens here, we should also see now the actual image and the name of the token. So going back to GMGN, what I can do is just copy the first token that has been migrated, paste it in the entered token address and add the token. And as you can see, it is loading because behind the scenes, it is catching the name, the symbol, also the image. It is the token address that it is verified, and also the price in Solana. And we can do that for the next token as well, just to show you how it works. We add the token, the spinner loads, and here you can see that we also added this token with the name and the symbol, and of course the Solana price. And for good practices, we can take a third token, add it once again, add token, and also that token will be added to our list with the name, the symbol, the mint, of course, and the price in Solana. And of course, as you can see, we kept it at 7 digits after the comma, and this price is so small that it just returns 0. So there is room for improvement, but for now, I think it is working really well. We can add tokens, fetch the price, get the image, the name, and the symbol, and add it to our list. And as you can see, for all these entries here, we have a button sync, and we have the overall sync prices button here on top. And that functionality we will now add to our page.tsx file. And if that is working, then we are done. So let's get at it. Alright, to make sure that we can actually sync one or all the tokens at once, we just need to add the functionality that we created before and add it behind the buttons that at the moment just do a console log. So the changes that I made are really straightforward. I updated the function names to sync tokens and sync token, just to keep the function names short and concise and also really descriptive. If we look at the sync token function, it holds the same logic as our add token. Of course, we are not going to check if the token is valid because we already did that. It is already in our table. We just want to sync it. So I created one new state, which is called set syncing token address. And that state will just be set once we are syncing a token, so that in our spinner, we can show that we are syncing one or multiple tokens. Next, we will use the same getTokenPrices function, and here we will provide the token address, and that needs to be the address that has been sent to us once the button has been clicked. And here again, we will also check if a success is returned or not. And if a success was not returned, then we will set the invalid token message and we can show our error. However, if it was successful, then we will also update our table. And we do that by updating our state, which is the set tokens state. Remember, before, when we were adding a token, we added a token to this state that holds all our tokens. And with this functionality, we are just going to update that current token within this state with the latest data that we have received. And that's what we do here. And once that is done, then we will also set the set syncing token address to false, because we are no longer syncing a token. Now, the sync tokens functionality is almost the same. Again, we have a separate state for that to make sure that we can show when all the tokens are syncing. And besides sending one token, we will take the actual token addresses from the tokens state here on top. And we will just pull out all the addresses, turn it into a string array, and that string array we will forward to our getTokenPrices functionality. And again, here we will do the same. We will check if a success was returned, and if not, we will set our setInvalidToken state to display the error. Otherwise, we will make sure that data was returned, and then we will add that data to our setToken state, which holds all our tokens in the table at the moment. And then if that is done, then we will also set the isSyncingAllPrices state to false, because we are no longer syncing any token. And with that done, we have now a add token function, a sync tokens function, and a sync token function to sync one specific token. And if we go back to our application once again, we can add some new tokens once more by taking the last migrated tokens and add them to our table. We can take the second one as well, add it to our table, And for good practice, we can take the third token as well and also add it to our table. And you can see that it is quite quick in fetching the names, the symbols, the images, and also doing the verification of the token. And in theory, if we click the sync tokens button, it should reflect the changes here. As you can see, we have here now 4251 and 1543. And if we click the sync button, then you will see that the price has been updated for these 3 tokens. And of course, we can also do that per token by clicking on this button here. And as you can see, the price is constantly changing. So we know that the functionality behind our buttons is now working for all the tokens or for one specific token. So now we built a simple app that uses the Solana Vibe Station token API and metadata API to fetch the token information and the token price. And we use the Solana kit in combination with our Solana Vibe Station RPC to verify that we only add valid tokens. So in the next videos, we will take this same app built on top of that, where we will create some buy functionality and actually go buy any of these tokens. And in the next videos after that, we will turn this app into an actual simple trading bot. So I hope you think it's interesting. If you do, like the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.